Hi, welcome back to Fatal Dates, a show about real connection in an unreal world. My date today is with Bernard Drax, otherwise known as Draxtor. He's a creative force in the online world Second Life, and he's the host of the Second Life book club. I want to talk to Draxtor about fakeness, false selves, avatars, digital worlds. It's possible to have a real connection with anyone we meet in a virtual space. Hard to know what to wear for my date today, so I've gone mainly black, because I don't have an avatar to wear, so he can project what he wants onto me. Let's see how it goes. Hi, Draxtor. How are you doing today?
Very good, Susanna. Thank you for having me. I did not disclose to my wife that I'm going on a date. That's actually a deal breaker. I've been married for a long time, but I'm sure she'll make an exception for you. You know,
it's a deal breaker, but she'll make an exception. So
everything is negotiable. Haven't you learned that in your time on this planet?
To some degree, yes. But if everything is negotiable, how come you didn't tell her beforehand that you're going on this fatal date with me?
Well, I told her I'm going on a podcast to discuss dating and things like that. But the way you introed it, you said, I'm going on a date with Draxtor. So that is a little bit more concrete than going on a show to discuss this sort of in an abstract fashion without actually dating the host.
No, right? That's probably true. And I feel that it's good. It gives me an opportunity to say something about this format and what this is, because we're still very early days on my fatal dates, and appreciating any feedback that you might have for me. I mean, for me, these are not just abstract conversations. I don't just...
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not criticizing your intro. I think that intro is marvelous but the, hello, see, that was my wife. She just came in. She's
checking you out. It's good, as she should be. Yeah, excellent.
I'm not afraid.
So you were just telling me how excellent my intro was. That's good. Tell me, give me some feedback.
The intro is great. I'm saying this a little tongue in cheek. I think the intro is great because you're saying you're going on a date, but we are on a video call. And as you know, I do work in virtual worlds, and I've started a series called Love Made in Second Life, where people date. They tell their stories about dating via their avatars. And one of the most fascinating thing is that they're dating sometimes for extended period of time. In one case, it was about a year before these people disclosed or shared real life photos. So for a year, they saw each other only as their avatars. And as you know, avatars can be cuddly little teddy bears. They can be dragons. They can be sort of real life replicas, minus 20 years and 50 pounds, depending on your preferences. So this has always been the criticism in the mainstream about, Second Life, nobody knows who anybody is. Could be anybody. Look at that. It could be like a weirdo. Could be like a 50-year-old dude in his underwear in his mother's basement or something.
Listen. I've got a really important question that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So you are not just Bernard Drax. You are also Draxtor, and you're not on a dating site, but you have a very developed, established, sophisticated online avatar. You have an alter ego. You spend a lot of your time not as Bernard Drax, but as Draxtor. Drax is a very cool guy. I've seen him. He's got his Pac-Man T-shirt. He's got his dreads, and I want to know what's that been like in your life. I want to know about the genesis of the character Draxtor. I want to know about.
I'm not cool in real life, is what you're saying. This date is over, Susanna. I'm gonna go.
Seems like everybody these days is on the internet, right? But no, 20% and fewer, I think, are on the internet. Where is everybody else? I think maybe you're afraid. Like, are you a computer person? No, I'm not. I don't like that would be like changing my sex or my political affiliation. I'm not. That's a whole new. I'm not that person.
Well, I'm on a date here with Bernard Drax, but your name at the bottom says Drax. Or am I on a date with Draxtor? No, I don't know who I'm on a date with. Who am I on a date with, please?
I happen to be, I would say, kind of the same person. Now, there's a lot of variations in virtual worlds, but also, again, on social media. I mean, some people play personas, that there's nothing per se wrong with it. Again, we're going into the realm of like, what is real, what is fake, what is a version of myself, and where is the line between nefarious sort of catfishing or whatever in the dating sense, or fake news or whatever. I, personality wise, my digital alter ego Draxtor is very much like I am in real life. I am very sort of engaging extrovert, but I also, when the batteries are down, I need to recharge them in solitude.
So how did you develop the character? How long has Draxtor been alive for? How did you develop his look?
What is a character? He's not a character. I'm sending him off into I'm sending him into the computers like Tron. I'm sending him in, but he's the same guy. I just can't travel. Like, I can't put myself into pixels and zeros and ones. So I got to take him, but he is me, right? I profiled a community 2007. They play democracy. They have like this huge castle. It's called Neufreistadt. And they have a city administration, and they have meetings, and it's super boring. And they talk about, should we build this bridge? Should we not build this bridge? What is the budget there? I'm not sure.
This is all in Second Life. This is not Second Life. Okay, this is not.
But here comes the punchline. Here comes the punchline. That was my first story. It was called Democracy in a Virtual World. So I encountered this community, and I was like, this is fascinating. Why do they do this? So I profiled them. I did a bunch of interviews, and then it came out that most of them, not all, but they had also art. They had little shops. But again, they had meetings. Everybody was required to go into these city council meetings. Everybody was part of a fictitious political party. They had debates, this and that. Should we put a stop sign over here? It turns out most of the people in this Second Life community were in real life retired public officials. I am not kidding you. I'm not kidding. It was really like, they work like 40 years in some local city administration. You go like, oh my God, I'm retired. What am I going to do? Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to role play the same thing. So
role play is more and more part of we're making big generalizations here, but I would say role play is more and more part of people's lives. And I see that, for example, recently as Halloween. I'm in London. When I grew up in Britain, there was no Halloween whatsoever. And increasingly, there's more and more Halloween. And partly that's because American culture has become a global culture. But I also think that partly it's because it's not Halloween as we know it anymore. It's the festival of cosplay, because more and more what people want to do, and we started with kids, but it's adults too. What we all want to do is live virtual worlds and bring those virtual worlds to life by wearing costumes. What we want to do, we want to live our lives for Instagram, for whatever else, for the photos of it. And we could say, in many ways, I'm just an old fuddy-duddy and I'm just dull and boring and so what's the harm in it? But to another extent, what is lost when cosplay, role play, permanent Halloween becomes our reality?
I think dressing up and being playful is a wonderful thing. As a matter of fact, I think that this is what the playfulness that children have, the unselfconscious playfulness is something that could save us. Now, this sounds very sort of like maybe hippy dippy, whatever, but I feel that we really have to bring that back into our lives. So if people dress up and play around, the Second Life equivalent would be to go in a sandbox and test out. Some people have 300 avatars. They go through them. They every day they look different. They present. It's a symbol of how they feel. Oftentimes, all that stuff is wonderful. What I find extremely problematic, and I think that's where we're aligned, is a capitalist system that forces us to be a certain way to serve that system. Most people have that. Look, I am a self-employed Second Life movie maker. I can run around in my pajamas all day. I can go to the park. I can go to the grocery store looking like a homeless guy. And nobody will say anything because I deliver my work, I make my living. But most people are pushed into very uncomfortable roles all their entire waking hours. I think we often forget that. So when we talk about, people dress up and people are not themselves, people are never themselves. Most people are never themselves their entire life.
Helen has trained herself to know what she's going to do, in what order, and where the things are to do it with. She really doesn't have to think about it. She already knows what clothes she's going to wear today. As it turned out, it was a special day for Helen, too. But she makes a habit of being ready for special days. She starts by having a place for things and keeping them there.
And I totally agree. All of us are never ourselves our entire lives, to such a great extent. It's all a massive construct. I completely agree. But
I'm suggesting, real quick, but what I mean, and I know this because I grew up that way. My father is an engineer. I have a good relationship with my father, but I tended towards the creative side. My mother was a school teacher. She passed away a long time ago. I was more aligned with her, and she more understood. So my propensity of expressing myself musically, artistically, and my father was especially objecting towards my love for sci-fi and fantasy literature. And I grew up with this mantra: oh my God, you got to really kind of get a grip on real life. I'm not quoting him per se, but that was the sentiment. The real life, the real world out there, you're running away, escapism. So this charge of escapism, which I sometimes level as well when people read Nora Roberts' romance novels, but that's also unfair. I don't know what how people's
listen, I'm all for escapism. But what I would say, and I agree with you in many ways, but there's some other things that trouble me. When you say people are, they're locked into dull lives, then they can escape into permanent Halloween cosplay and their fantasy life. But they're all dressing up as Perry Riordan. They're all dressing up as Mickey Mouse. They're dressing up as set figures that the culture has even created the costumes from. It's still a function of...
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Susanna, because that was my point. And see, thank you. You should be my editor of everything. Even I should hire you to walk around with me. When I open my mouth, you say shh, and then you just deliver the point that I'm trying to make for a half hour. This is actually what I wanted my point to be. The biggest problem with this dress up and all this kind of stuff is that we are only reflecting corporate culture. I completely agree. I agree 100%. And although I'm not hired here or invited to this program as a Second Life ambassador, I must again say that Second Life in essence is a sandbox technology. It means that Second Life is a digital white a 3D room that is white, and you have an unlimited amount of colors. And yes, people do sort of they create they recreate some stuff that they know from popular culture. But for the most part in Second Life, people create stuff from scratch.
You know what? I don't want to talk about Second Life anymore. You are here as my date. I haven't invited Second Life on a date with me. I've invited you on a date with me. But I see, and I know it's because you passionately love it, but I also see that to some degree, here I'm going to be rude, but to some degree, your corporate identity has merged with your personality. It's hard for you to speak about these things without referencing Second Life. What do you think about that rude comment?
Yes, I'm a self-employed media maker. So yes, you're right. Just like you are an author.
But I'm not. But I'm not here evangelizing, for example, sublation media. I'm not saying, well, what Doug's up to is blah blah blah.
But you misunderstand me. I'm not here to talk up Second Life. I'm here to talk up a creative life, a life that is free of algorithms, a life that is completely dedicated to expressing yourself. In Second Life, I can be in a basement with somebody having the type of sexual relationships that I consent with that other person, and it's completely private.
No, you can't.
Yes. Yes.
No, you can't, because it's happening virtually. It's not happening in the real world. I'm so sorry. You are not. You're having a role play, but you are not having an actual sexual experience. Come off it. You're really not, unless there's some new goals in Second Life and peripherals that I'm not aware of that I could be plugging into my.
When you read a love, or your lover writes you a poem 100 years ago and sends you that poem, And that poem, I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there. Look at this library. I can grab some and we can read it. And that evokes an emotional response in you. That is a connection with that person over a distance of space and time. No?
Yes, but it's always done in the hope, well, not always, but one senses it's done in the hope of, and I can't wait until you're in my arms again. I can't wait until I see you physically, because what this is a proxy to me seeing you physically.
Right. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. Okay, Susanna, this is great that we're getting this. See? No, we're getting somewhere. Now I completely understand you. I didn't even, being so corporatized, didn't even occur to me that is the issue. But I agree 100% with the issue. If the fact is that we're talking about a substitution versus an augmentation, yes, it's a huge problem. It is a huge problem. It's a huge problem that, again, I use Instagram, that kids just share photos, porn on Instagram, and then they have a little relationship, or on Tinder or whatever, and then, well, Tinder, they meet up and they hook up and stuff, but let's just say they never meet in the physical realm, and they just share, and then they even break up through that, and they never have any type of physical exchange. That is a problem.
And I have to say, it's not just kids, it's anybody. I have a sense sometimes from talking to my friends who do a lot of online dating, for example, that and you can even meet, you can very intensely meet someone in an online space, get lots of text from them, get a lot of dopamine high from them. You can even meet up with them, and what sometimes seems to happen is an amazing date happens. Oh yes, it's every bit as good as your connection might have seen. We're definitely going to see each other. It feels so wonderful. Ghosting, never hear from the person again. And then it seems that some people just want to have these, as it were, Halloween cosplay, the theatrical experience of a lovely date. And because I met you online, it doesn't actually mean anything. And I am able to ghost you. I am able to go away. And to a certain extent, I think ghosting is an acceptable response. It's obviously not an acceptable response at all, and it's horrible. But to some extent, what it is saying, I met you in an unreal place. And all of this is even if we meet and have that wonderful coffee and go for the walk by the river and hold hands and look each other's eyes, and I say to you, I'm going to call you tomorrow. This has been so special. Even if I am allowed to go off because none of it was real, because all of it is a fantasy, that a real role play, cosplay that both parties are involved in, which says, wouldn't it be wonderful to just meet someone out of nowhere, have this fabulous thing, and go off into the sunset with them? The digital world has reified, has made real the public realm. Our fantasies have been reified, have been made real. But the price that we pay is we're so plugged into it all the time that we never step back from it. So what he says is the public realm was a space where we all had to go, bow our heads, do our stuff. But there was always a place to run away from. That place was art. That place was also relationships, illicit sex, whatever else. Everything. There was stuff that happened that was never written about, recorded, that wasn't the public realm. But now the public realm has really got its hands into us. What it says is, in the past, that things were bad. There were masters and slaves. Nobody had any money. Now it's fine. You can get what you want from the internet. It's all here. It's all here. You never need to escape. You never need to escape. It says it, and it does lots of good things in that way. It's much safer. So we were talking before about, what might be somebody's, in Second Life, there's not many places for depraved fantasies to be made. And maybe that's a good thing, but there is something lost by that. Or is that just me?
I think, Susanna, we need to go on a Second Life tour to places where I usually don't go, but there are a lot of depraved fantasies in Second Life.
I wanted to bring you back and thank you for letting me add some thoughts. I really appreciate.
My pleasure. And may I say, before, when we were meeting, I just want to say that when we were meeting in the real world for our virtual date with our actual faces on,
it was on a webcam. It was not real.
Yeah, you're totally right. It wasn't real, but I very much felt that was we were in my place. But I feel now we've gone back to your place, and so I'm going to hand over to you because I think that you host and compare here, because I think you're very comfortable doing that in this environment. So you guide the conversation. There were things you wanted to say. And why don't you go ahead and say them?
Oh, look, we actually have a visitor here. I didn't. Here's a guy, Kill Kent. I don't know him. We have about 300 visitors per day here on Book Club Island, and he just came and he's exploring. Hello, Kill Kent. Hello.
Okay, great.
Kill.
Hello.
The only thing that my sense was after our conversation is that I did not really express how different Second Life is as a platform or world to meet other people, different from all other digital offerings. And I'm not here to sell Second Life. I'm not a Second Life salesperson. The difference is that these platforms are algorithmically driven and Second Life is not. That's a huge difference. That means, and if I understand you correctly, I'm going to ask you a specific question about that. If I understood you correctly, is that your issue with dating in the new digital world, one of the issues or behavior in general is that everything is public, that we're all doing everything in public, and that sort of the public posting and sharing and being sort of like this broadcasting person is really incentivized. And you're absolutely correct, but it's incentivized by platforms that use the algorithm and have business models around that algorithm. Second Life doesn't have that. In Second Life, of course, people share what they do, but a fraction of the Second Life population does that. The vast majority of Second Life people are like, like little, I don't know, local stamp collecting or knitting circles that don't care what anybody thinks about them.
My show is an exploration of how one can make real connection in our times, which seem very unreal. And part of that is to do with the amount of time we spend online. Part of that is to do with new ways of meeting people. Part of that, though, is also to do with the false selves or the avatars, the simulacras that we surround ourselves with. And so, although I totally hear you when you say that Second Life is a very different environment to other places, dating apps, other social networks that are driven by algorithms, it nevertheless is a place where people present under an avatar. And look at you, you've got your fantastic avatar, and I've got my somewhat less fully developed avatar that I'm wearing. And those are physical manifestations of an avatar. And we could also translate those things into the ways people dress in order to look good on other networks, on other social networks, to present themselves well online.
Let me tell you, I spend a lot of money on Susanna Kleeman, who is a fantastic author and a wonderful podcast host, although I completely disagree with her on almost everything. No, but her book Twice is absolutely amazing, and Susanna's podcast is amazing. But I spent so much money on Susanna Kleeman's avatar. Look at her hair. Her hair has... Well, because she wanted it. What can I refuse?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sugar Daddy Draxtor. I really appreciate it.
By the way, very nice conversation. And
I see why you like your Second Life so much. Okay, you know what? It's very nice to meet you, Kilken.
Yeah,
it's very
too.
nice as ever to talk to you.
I don't know, really. I'm sorry.
But I think that I'm going to have to go. We're live now. We're going back live again because our after party has become more and more fascinating. And because in his extreme non-defensiveness, my date has got various things that have cropped up that he wants to say and that happen off the back of the lorry, as it were. Well, we were talking about. Well, we switched off our broadcast, and then you were talking to me about, what are selves anyway? What is truth anyway? Who are we really?
What is authenticity? I mean, did you have the perception that I was authentic enough in my role, or have I now presented like you were suggesting? Where does the avatar start and where does the real me begin? And what it just occurred to me now during this little break of going off the air and starting a new stream, a new recording, is that although I am used to being on camera, I have argued in many instances that the forcing people who are not used to being on camera during COVID specifically, with studying, with going to remote schools and whatnot, is really bad, and it is causing enormous anxiety, and it is causing people to present, again, forcing themselves to be personas and Yeah, I don't know. See, now I don't know where I'm going with this. This is what David
But do you
Foster
feel
Wallace.
sorry? But I'm feeling like this date hasn't gone well for you at all, Draxtor. And what I'm feeling is that I have forced you. Reading between the lines here of my date, I would go home with my friend, call my friend after, and say, the poor guy. I feel that I forced him to speak in a way that he didn't want to. That he was on camera and he was presenting. Suddenly, his certainties about who he was, his personas, had all started to slip. He became. He unmoored somewhat. He wasn't a natural space for him.
It's interesting that I now realize that I have argued many, many times against the use of, or the forceful use of cameras, which is sometimes required in school. My wife is going back to schools. They're doing remote learning. They have to be on Zoom call. It's very uncomfortable for some people. It depends how your wife is.
Is it uncomfortable for you? Have you felt uncomfortable on this date?
No, because I do it all the time. But why have you brought this up? Because I feel now in my sort of self-analysis that maybe I am not 100% natural. I am definitely. I can tell you that. I can tell you that I'm much more natural in my natural habitat, having conversations in Second Life with anybody, because I don't have to be on camera. Maybe that's my vanity. I'm looking at the light situation.
Can I make an impertinent suggestion? Perhaps also because when you go into Second Life, you go as an observer, you go as an expert, you go as a known sort of quasi, that's the wrong word, absolute celebrity within Second Life. You are a known persona, and you are the person who brings control and who brings the narrative and brings a story.
No, it has to do with what I said earlier about the Instagramization of society, meaning the projection of us in our best light. And feeling bad about, oh my God, here, look at this wrinkle. Oh, I thought like I could shave off 5 years of my actual 52 years by having the hair and being kind of hip and wearing the Adidas jacket. And then I look at myself in the monitors like, I'm not really pulling that off. I'm becoming self-conscious, and I'm not in the conversation 100%. That's what I say when people interview me about Second Life. That's why I usually say, well, the avatar is actually giving you let's call it a little mask that enables you to intellectually be maybe more focused, because you're not constantly self-conscious about how you're looking. And you were just saying, we're making everything public. If we would be sitting together in a bar in Munich, in LA, or in London, I would connect more with you for sure. Even if you were to record this for later broadcast, because the nature of being in a bar and having even a camera there, I will forget that camera. I'm not forgetting this camera.
No. But there's also something else, which is the nature of our discourse here is just words. It's words. That's what matters. We're having a debate, this, that, the other. Whereas if we met in the flesh, we would also look a lot more at each other. And
No, but we wouldn't see. But this is where I disagree. Yes, we're having words here, but the camera is always on. The camera is always on. I'm looking at myself. I'm looking constantly, checking, is the hair okay? Is this okay? It's not that I'm constantly doing it, but that is in the background. You got to be, not you, but one has to be completely delusional to think that doesn't matter. That matters to everyone. When I'm in the bar with you, I'm not having a camera in front. I'm not looking at my camera monitor. I'm looking at you. Yeah, I might be feeling, if you look at me, I might be feeling like, oh, maybe the hair is weird, but I don't have constant mediation through a screen.
It's true, because in the bar, in the bar, it also wouldn't be replayed later to strangers and memes made out of it. And
exactly. Also, it would be very dark at the bar, and we wouldn't even see me sweat. But you see the point. The point here is, what I'm saying, the artifice of this environment, that's what I'm talking about. I'm looking at my monitor. I'm not going out on a date with someone and there is a film crew and a monitor in the back that constantly plays back to me, the weird stuff that I'm self-conscious about. Here, the mouth is doing this, or my double chin, or whatnot.
But you see, what I think is, but when relationships, and you know, relationships, you meet on a dating site and you go out into the real world, into the bar. But I think when it began on the dating site, there's always an aspect that you've got the self-consciousness of, did the avatar that I presented, the image I presented, is that matching up here? Is that matching up here? And that always hovers in the background. And also it shows your first lies. You know what I mean? Everything that is good in a relationship is well, sometimes lies. Well, anyway, I was about to say sometimes lies can be good, but that's a long, other, separate, highfalutin conversation. But what I want to say is the problems occur when lies enter the discourse that you have with someone that begins as a stranger. And if the lies already happened before you met them in real life, that's a problematic cause for it to have gone down, basically.
In the physical world. Yes, you're correct. And I want to say, you're talking again about I was more broadly actually talking about connecting with anyone versus I'm talking about the camera in your face type of thing, irrespective of a romantic situation or a possible romantic situation or not. Even the purely intellectual one or a job situation or a first meeting, to have a camera monitor in front of you is unnerving, and that we moved as a culture to having to accept this and forcing especially introvert people into this type of situation it's not good for learning. I mean, I did a whole documentary about learning in virtual worlds for kids, how good that is when kids are not actually on camera, but that's a whole different story.
No, and it matters. You're right. It matters in any human interaction, but the human interaction that I'm particularly interested in for this show, Fatal Dates, is the connection of what could be called a romantic connection. And a reason why that is a privileged and special one is because we're always told that no matter what, even, you know, in the gulag, even in the worst possible places, even in poverty, the prospect of meeting a soulmate is kind of dangled to us in a way that religion used to be dangled to us, which says there's always a salvation, there's always an outlet. And part of what, there is this idea of magic that comes from, if you were to meet the right person, then all wounds would be healed. And I'm critical.
Wholeness, it becomes whole. That's right. That's what I
am, in the same way that, you know, one interrogates religion as being the opium of the masses. To a certain degree, I think that this romantic idea is the opium of the masses. But
absolutely.
I also think that, but I'm not prepared to throw it away entirely. And that's what I want to do with my guests is to talk around. Is it valid? Is there such a thing as soulmates? And if there is it hideously compromised by having everything public, filmed, recorded, found on a dating site where you're lying already? That's what I'm interested in.
Yes to all of the above. Yes.
Okay. What I was also saying to you is, but to give up everything and say, I just go into the realm of cosplay, I give it all up, it would seem to me that, firstly, that's a tremendous illusion because you're always going to bring stuff. And you're never, you know, if it was absolutely a pure space where you could Halloween all the time and cosplay all the time, that would be wonderful and very admirable. But you're always going to bring your shit into that place. And it is a decadent position where you say, I give up any semblance of responsibility to other people or of anything other than self-pleasure, which is, in the end, when you cosplay too much, it's a selfish pursuit, even if you're finding other people who mirror and find the same thing there.
In the final lecture on the self under siege, we will discuss the work of Jean Baudrillard, a French social theorist. Actually, that now is a misnomer since one of Baudrillard's theses is the disappearance of the social. Baudrillard is perhaps the most important theorist that can be characterized as postmodern. The self under siege in modernity has always presumed that there was a self to be under siege. But in the view of Baudrillard, society has reached a point at which it has literally been overcome by its technology, and the new and important issues aren't about things like the non-believer or the non-offender, but about the non-person. In the world of Baudrillard, social relations have disappeared between humans because humans have begun to disappear.
Hi there, Jason. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I've been talking about this show. I was on a date last night talking about this show.
Oh, really? Oh.